spent several years in opposition now. I just want to say to my family who is here, my husband Don, my daughter Michelle and my son Scott, and my son-in-law Paul, and my two absolutely wonderful granddaughters, Lauren and Sarah, that they've been here every step of the way to support me. I'm as nervous today as I was 28 years ago when I was first elected. I want to tell you that but my family has been all important, and it's not an easy life to be the family of a politician. But they've stuck with me, they've been here for me, and I just want to truly thank them for their commitment, because it does take a family to make this happen and to make this a career.
Bonnie Mitchelson began a remarkable career in politics in a way that was very common for women in the 1980s. When her party, the Progressive Conservatives, couldn't find a male candidate in Manitoba's River East, they turned to a woman.
Wow, it's really an interesting story. I was very involved on the political scene, but it was always behind the scenes. I was a volunteer and an organizer, worked really hard, and found election campaigns very, very exciting. But it was always behind the scenes. So I got behind a candidate full force. I worked very hard. My husband was a politician, a city councillor, and I worked on his campaigns, ran most of his campaigns. So I was involved in that aspect, but never ever thought that I would run myself for political office. And we had, in 1986, before the 1986 election, we had a candidate nominated to run in River East. His name was Cliff Annabelle, and I don't know if your history goes back that far, but he was nominated and was running for us, and got into a bit of difficulty and had to resign. And it was just a very short time before the election was called in 1986. So they were looking for another Conservative candidate. And River East was not a Conservative riding. It was held by the NDP at the time. So they were looking for a candidate, and because my husband was a city councillor there, he was sought after by the party, hoping that he might run provincially. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, his company indicated to him that he would either have to resign his job or he would have to resign from the company should he choose to run for political office. And it was it was a decision that we made together that, you know, his career as a salesperson with Johnson & Johnson was very important, and a political office is not necessarily a guarantee. I mean, there's not too many people in life that have to justify their job every 4 years through an election process. And so we knew that there wasn't a guarantee in political office, so he made the decision to stay with his company. So they were scrambling, looking for a candidate, and River East, a fairly strong Mennonite community constituency. It was then, and it still is today, and there was some concern that maybe a woman might not be the best candidate to run in River East. And I know Gary Filman has said this before too, like when my name came up as someone that maybe they should be recruiting, one of the concerns was, can a woman win? Especially because we didn't hold the seat. And anyway, I guess he did talk to some of the players in the Mennonite community out here, and got their endorsement to pursue me to run. And it was very short notice. So I was approached and asked whether I might put my name forward. And I kind of thought, well, you know, it'll be 5 weeks out of my life, and I can do that. I can do that for the party. And just gave it my all. And so got the nomination, got out to the doors. It was March and it was cold. And I ran from door to door for that 5 weeks, and I won.
No one could have guessed that 5 weeks would turn into 30 years, one of the longest political careers ever enjoyed by a female in Canada. One of her first lessons was the urgency of mentorship, and it was fellow MLA Jerry Hammond who filled that role for her, guiding her through the very basics of the legislature. Bonnie Mitchelson was a successful registered nurse, and she brought a keen awareness of community health to her new job. She had seen close up the health benefits of physical activity, and she recognized the need for more recreational space in the sprawling River East neighborhood. She helped initiate the beginnings of the Gateway Rec Center and Soccerplex.
I went door to door with the rest of the community and asked for support and for money from families to build the arena. And then, of course, when I've always said that, communities can't expect government to do it all. I don't think communities want them to, but when the community gets involved and people join together to try to make something happen, that's where government plays a role in coming in to support a community. And so we worked hard to raise money in the community, and I worked hard to advocate for government to support that work that went on in the community. And as a result, we managed to get Gateway, the twin arenas, off the ground.
Her experience in healthcare also allowed her to realize that her constituency was home to a lot of tall buildings where many senior residents were living alone. As their MLA, she decided to conduct a survey to find out whether there was any interest in a lunch program in those buildings. There was, and she took the possibility of such a program to one of her biggest and wealthiest supporters, well-known real estate developer Martin Bergen.
He took the recreation room in one of his apartment blocks. He built an industrial kitchen where he put in industrial dishwashers and freezers and fridges, and hired with his own money a cook. And seniors could come down and for $4.50 get a hot meal at lunchtime, a very nutritious meal. And it was so popular.
Bonnie Mitchelson not only spearheaded that lunch program, she volunteered to help serve lunch in person. And she continued to do that for all the years she held office. From 1988 until 1993, Bonnie Mitchelson was in charge of culture, heritage, and recreation. Fortunately for Manitoba's actors, artists, as well as the province's technical and creative community, she believed in and supported the potential of Manitoba in the film and sound industries.
We recognized at the time, and Gary Filmon recognized at the time too, that our film industry and our sound industry brought a lot of money into Manitoba. For every dollar that government spent, there was $7 in economic benefit that came to our province. So when the federal government pulled out, and we were going through some difficult times in Manitoba, trying to make ends meet, we still recognized that we needed to support that, and we couldn't backfill all of the money that the federal government withdrew, but we maintained our funding and we increased it a bit, so we were able to keep that industry growing. And you see today that it's thriving as a result. If we'd pulled our money at the time, I don't think we would have had the same kind of industry here in Manitoba that we have today. We're pretty proud of that.
In 1993, Premier Gary Filmon named Bonnie Mitchelson Minister of Family Services. In that job, she was witness for 6 years to many heart-wrenching stories of broken families in crisis. It was a painful experience, and she believed in a proactive response.
We implemented a lot of programs that I can recall. One of them was a federal provincial initiative. It was called Taking Charge, still running today, where single parents had an opportunity to go back to school. We provided childcare for them, And they went back to school, and we connected them to the workforce as a result. And I went to many graduation ceremonies where there were 10, 15, 20 young women there with their kids, so very proud that they'd been able to receive a diploma and enter the workforce. So that's sort of building women's self-esteem.
She also felt passionately about other innovations, including Baby First, Early Start, and the dramatic Baby Think It Over programs.
And girls in their health classes had the ability to take these dolls home that were like real live babies and look after them for the weekend. And they cried, and they needed their diapers changed, and they needed all kinds of, well, anything that a baby would need. And it sort of gave young women an understanding of what it might be like to have a baby, and maybe have them think very carefully about getting pregnant. And it's not all sometimes what it's cracked up to be when you're a single person trying to look after a young baby.
Were these robot babies?
They were. Yes, but they were programmed. They were programmed to wake up and cry in the middle of the night, and very just I think a really good educational tool, and so that was one very small part. But I mean, there's supports for single moms to try to help them move off of the welfare of that cycle and into the workforce.
Bonnie Mitchelson's department focused energy on young single moms. She tried to educate her colleagues as well about the realities of domestic abuse and tried to upgrade programs for its victims. Those years as Minister of Family Services were harrowing. Constant awareness of child abuse, of poverty, as well as problems faced by mentally and physically disabled Manitobans. But the rewards were dramatic too.
Sometimes people judge politicians by how many times they're on the front pages of the newspaper or on TV. But a lot of the work that we do as politicians is behind the scenes work. And it's dealing with those individuals in the community that need support and help and don't know where to turn. And I can remember one woman calling my office, and she was just distraught. She had just been diagnosed with breast cancer and was having to have surgery. But she had a husband who had had a stroke and required a lot of heavy lifting and heavy care. So she called home care to try to get some support for him so she could go in to have her surgery, and she was told there was no home care for her. And she didn't know where to turn, so she called my office. And I immediately got on the phone to the Minister of Health. And I said, I have this situation in my community, and I'm hoping that you can do something. And she got the home care she needed, and she was able to have her surgery. And it was interesting because that was 5, 6, 7 years ago now. And just after the last election, I was in the local grocery store, and there she was, and she came over and she said, "You probably aren't going to remember me, but," she said, "this is what you did for me." And she said, "I don't think I would be here today if I hadn't had your help." And she explained that story to me. And she said, "I'll never forget that." And so those are the kinds of things that really make you feel that your job is important and that you have been able to accomplish something. And like I said, it's not the stories on the front pages of the newspaper that are the ones that really matter. It's the individuals that just don't know where to turn. And there are many, many stories like that.
Bonnie Mitchelson was one of the provincial ministers who came together to form the Child and Youth Secretariat, a new approach bringing together the power and resources of 7 separate ministries to work together. When the Progressive Conservatives lost the provincial election in 1999, Bonnie Mitchelson was elected by her peers to serve as their interim leader, and this was a rare achievement for a woman. Does she think that the active presence of more women in the legislature makes a significant difference?
Sure they do. Sure they do. They bring a much, well, a lot of, I guess a lot of the issues that we deal with affect women. And whether they really are women's issues or not, they are family issues, but it always seems to be the woman that sort of is in charge of ensuring that there's childcare available when two people are working in the same, two parent working families now. It's the woman that seems to be the one that takes responsibility for. So childcare isn't an issue, it's a family issue, but it tends to be a women's issue. Of course, domestic violence is what they say a women's issue, but it is a family issue, but it's women that are impacted more so than men. All of those things require some advocacy, and I think that women can understand a little bit more some of the issues, and I think that women have the ability to bring that different perspective. Most of the women that have been elected to the legislature come from a teaching or a nursing background, so they bring a different perspective to things. It's, I think women think about things a little differently sometimes than men do. May change and may be changing as we move to the next generation. And I see differences in families today where men are taking a much more hands-on role and responsibility for family issues.
She's confident that the era has arrived in which young women enjoy the self-confidence and the social supports to bring them into the political arena.
Oh, my granddaughters have been involved from day one with my life as a politician, and they find it pretty exciting. They've been to the legislature, they've been up in the gallery, they've watched question period, and they've watched me speaking in the legislature. They're very comfortable with knowing that their grandma is involved in politics. They're very excited to meet other politicians, the Speaker of the legislature, or the Premier, or the leader of the party. They understand and they know all of those things. They've been to events with me, my retirement event, and one of my granddaughters has interviewed me after, and very interesting what they pick up, because she remembered what I had said. I had talked about the personal care homes that had been built under my time in government in the legislature, the number of personal care home beds that have been built out in northeast Winnipeg. And so she was interviewing me and she was saying, now, she said, can you tell me about the nursing homes in River East? So, I mean, she's, it was just really, they pay attention, they know what is going on. They've been extremely proud of me and have been involved in lots of activities. I mean, they've been to the legislature many times. We've been to the Christmas open houses every year. They've been to my constituency office many, many times. They had their own special drawer there with their crayons and coloring books and whatever, so they would come and spend some time there with me. One of my granddaughter's best friends says that my granddaughter is going to be the Prime Minister of Canada one day. And they're immersed in politics, they understand politics, they don't have a negative feeling in any way about politicians or politics, and I would encourage that, and they're both very, very smart young women, and they play leadership roles in school, captain of the patrols, and they're both into competitive dancing, and they do very well. So they have lots of self-confidence, and I think that that's something that bodes well for the next generation of young girls that's coming up. They do have confidence in their ability, and I think they're encouraged more so than maybe we were in our day to be involved and take part and participate in leadership roles in all aspects of life, and that will bode well for, I think, politics into the future.